Welcome to the Pump Take Sports Show. This episode might be the most confusing of all time, considering we're talking about the Oklahoma City Thunder and their recent acquisitions, trades, moves, everything like that. The highlights of these, we're going to, talk about all of them, but Kelly Oubre leaving, getting traded to the Warriors, them trading Steven Adams to the Pelicans, them trading Schroeder to the Lakers, CP3 getting traded to the Suns, Rubio getting traded to the Timberwolves, them drafting Aleksej Pokuševski and trading first-round picks for him, George Hill being involved in a trade, and they received George Hill. And then through all this, they ended up with 1 million first-round picks. So, and of course, they already had so many first-round picks from the Paul George trade. So, of course, as Twitter and Instagram and everything says every day, Sam Presti continues to build his treasure chest of draft picks. And where do we even want to begin with this one?
Well, I think we can start where it all began. We can start with the CP3 trade. The CP3 trade, the Thunder received Kelly Oubre Jr., Ricky Rubio, Ty Jerome, Jalen Lecoq, and a 2022 first-round pick from the Suns. The interesting part of this trade is that, most of these players that they even received for CP3 have now also been traded away for other draft picks. Ricky Rubio was involved in a move to acquire Aleksej Pokuševski, affectionately known on the show as Fucked Guy, where the Thunder traded Ricky Rubio, the 25th pick and the 28th pick in the draft, to the Timberwolves in exchange for the 17th pick, who was Fucked Guy. So essentially what the Thunder are doing here is they're blowing up their entire roster, getting players who they think are young and promising, and just trying to acquire as many first and second round picks as they possibly can to build their team for the future.
And they're doing a great job of this.
Yeah. Go ahead, Marco.
Yeah, no, it's just kind of crazy because they have Shai, who clearly they believe in, and I think, well, I know I can speak for everyone on the podcast as well. We all are huge believers in SGA as well. So yeah, they just get Fuck Guy, they get SGA, and I think Presti is just kind of deciding to trade everyone to rebuild around these two players.
Which you almost have to do in the Western Conference, right? Like as it continues to become more competitive, you're not gonna. They got rid of Gallinari also, which is another thing that they did, but which is crazy because. What's even their starting lineup at this point? They basically moved pretty much everything. They're going to have guys that were bench guys coming up into the starting lineup and just completely build around SGA. And they have so many first-round picks that they can do this over – they're going to be picking half the draft next year. And next year's class is supposed to be superbly talented compared to this year's draft class of NBA prospects. So – I mean, what's taking 1 year of not being competitive and potentially retooling to be a competitive team for the next 10 years in a Western Conference where a lot of the teams that are kind of at the top are led by stars who are over 30 years old?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think they know or care what their starting lineup is going to be this year, because I think this is going to be a notorious tank job this year. I think they're just trying. They're absolutely looking 4 or 5 years down the road. To build around Shai for sure. And the amount of picks they have is just absolutely ridiculous. And they have the means with those picks to trade for guys, trade up in the draft. They pretty much run the draft for the next few years. And if they see a guy they really want, they have the assets to make deals to trade up and get essentially any player they feel would be a good fit on their team going forward.
Absolutely, because draft capital never really loses value, right, over time. So if they wanted the first overall pick next year, if they don't have it from not being a good team, they could just trade for it, right? They have the assets to do that. And I think one thing I really like about what they did is they never touched SGA, which I think was just a smart move. I think Presti seeing the value in what he has in Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is very big brain of him in the big picture to – you look at even Oubre last year, he averaged 19 points a game or something like that. Oubre had a great season last year, and doesn't matter. Presti, you get a young asset, it doesn't matter, you're gone. And SGA was pretty much the only unprotected player, which I think was a good idea.
And like that's kind of what I think Sam Presti's done a great job at this offseason, is understanding the actual like long-term and short-term value of the assets that he has in his organization. Like the Thunder last year were by no means a bad team. However, in a stacked Western Conference, a team with like old CP3, Steven Adams, Gallinari, and SGA isn't going to win you a championship. And it's not going to win you a championship in the next year or the next 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. Like, so I think they picked the right time to kind of blow it up, stack up on draft capital, and retool for when some of these teams that are great now aren't as competitive.
Yeah, I was literally just going to bring that up, Kale. Like, if you're not winning, you're losing. And although they made the playoffs last year in such a stacked Western Conference, Sam Presti's just like, yo, it doesn't matter. Because at the end of the day, even though they had a good team, a playoff team, it's like they weren't going to win that roster. So just blow the entire thing up and rebuild. And I think, at least my NBA viewing, this has been by far the biggest rebuild that I've ever seen, and the most trades that a team has done in a free agency that I've ever seen. And from what I've just heard, from basketball analysts that I watch on YouTube and that I follow, this is the biggest team rebuild that they've ever seen as well. So it's very interesting what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think credit needs to go, obviously, to Sam Presti for seeing where he could trade these guys to and get really good value for his pieces. Like trading CP3 to Phoenix is perfect. Phoenix also isn't going to win a championship, but they're so hungry to make the playoffs that you give them CP3, which elevates them to that level, and they'll give you Kelly Oubre and pick or whatever, and then you take those assets and you're like, okay, now I have this little egg in my hands. Well, Kelly Oubre, he's not part of my long-term future here. Trade him to the Warriors, who just lost Klay Thompson. And now, you get something out of it, and now you take that and turn it into something down the road. And so, I mean, obviously there's not too much to really say about what from the OKC side of things, because they have all these picks. This is a future project now, right? Like, we're not going to sit here and tell you about the 2023 class because we don't know about the 2023 class, but that's what OKC is looking at right now. And so, like, OKC, it's a down the road picture, but they've really blown it up, and it's an exciting team to keep an eye on, for sure. And with that, make sure you watch some draft videos with the 2023 draft class. Maybe we'll make one in 2023 when OKC's picking half the draft. But
maybe Sam Presti will hire you.
Yeah,
exactly. Thank you very much for anyone who listened to us talk about OKC, and we will see you next time on Pump Take Sports Show.